Good evening, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 7 o'clock. I want to be mindful of your time away from your family. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Amy LeBlanc. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services here in Arlington Heights, District 25. Some of you I have met before. It's nice to see you all here. Tonight we're here to talk about the transition to middle school for students with IEPs. So if you are here and you don't have a child with special education needs, you're welcome to stay. But everything we talk about tonight is going to be specific to that transition process for our students who need special education services. So we have staff from both middle schools, from Thomas and South. They're going to talk about their specific programs. We're going to talk a little bit about what we do as a district to help with that transition process. If you have some questions tonight that are general, not really specific to your child, but just in general, you're welcome to ask them, and staff will stick around for a little bit when we're done. You can approach them, introduce yourselves if you haven't met them yet, ask them questions at that time. So there's a handout. Our slides have shifted a little bit since we printed, but everything is still in there. You may just have to change pages a little bit. So our goal is for the smoothest transition for your kiddos as possible. We get that this is an anxious time for a lot of people. I will say we often find it's more anxious for parents than it is for the kids. Your fifth graders are generally really excited to go to middle school, to be sixth graders. They feel like they're going to be big kids. A lot of them have older brothers and sisters, so they've seen what it's like at South. They've seen what it's like at Thomas, or they've heard about it, so they're excited to go. But as a district, there are a number of things that we do to really try to ease that anxiety, both for you and for the kids, and for our fifth grade teachers. I think they have a little anxiety too. They're sending these kids off, and they've been with them often for 6 years, so they want to make sure that they've done everything they can. So we have tonight's event. Sometime this spring, you will all be invited to attend an IEP meeting to transition your child from fifth grade to sixth grade. There will be events for the sixth graders themselves. There will be parent coffees, there will be orientations. All of our fifth graders, whether they're in special education or general education, go to the middle school for a tour. We'll do an additional tour for some of our fifth graders, especially those going into programs like ERP and ILP, which we'll talk about tonight. We do an additional visit for those kids. We do offer parent tours. Those are typically reserved for families of students where we're considering more than one program. So we're not sure if your child just needs a resource level of support, or if they may go into an instructional program, or we're trying to decide which of those two programs best meet your child's needs. We may ask you to come and tour, to see those classrooms, to meet the staff, to get a better sense of what we're recommending. And then we do have summer tours, so some students will come in the summer. Often they're led by students, so we have students who volunteer, they tour the building, they do it in a large group. However, if your child needs something a little bit more personalized, where they need time to walk their schedule, they need time to practice with their locker, because we have combination lockers, although we do have keys if they really need it. We sometimes have kids come in for a more specialized tour where they're walking their individual schedule, they're walking to their specific classrooms, they're visiting their specific locker, just to help get through that and really have an exposure to school before it starts. So our transition timeline, clearly we're in January. At the end of January, our staff begin to meet with each other. So actually in 2 weeks, South will begin to meet with their feeder elementary schools. And they're having very preliminary conversations. They're hearing from the special education teachers at the elementary school about your child, what your child's strengths are, what their concerns are with that transition, and starting to talk about which programs they think might be the best for that child. They're not making decisions, they're just having kind of those beginning conversations about what types of supports they envision for that child. Then later in the spring, usually March, April, May, you will be invited to an IEP meeting, and at that time they'll go through the whole IEP with you. They'll talk about minutes of service. They may adjust goals, they may adjust accommodations, they may adjust minutes of service. And the reason that that happens is because our middle school is set up on a 10-period schedule. You'll hear about that from our principals, but we have to adjust the minutes slightly because they're in this sort of forced schedule that may change their minutes slightly. It's not as flexible as elementary school. There are also some accommodations that work really well in a K-5 environment, whereas in middle school we want kids to be more independent. It's not as easy to do some of those accommodations. They're not as appropriate, so they may make some changes to accommodations. In June, we transfer all of our student files, so Olive will send their fifth grade records over to Thomas or to South, depending which school, right on down the line. And then in August, we begin the school tours. Your case manager will contact you to introduce themselves, and then school begins. One thing to note is that typically the resource teacher or the person who is the head of the instructional program will be your case manager. If your child only has speech and language, it may be the speech pathologist who's your case manager. It depends. If your child's in a resource program, their case manager will change every year because resource teachers only teach one grade level. So you'll have a new case manager every year, which is different from elementary where you probably only had one or two across your 6-year journey because somebody did K2 and somebody did 3-5. All right, I'm going to hand it over to our middle school principals to talk about a typical middle school day.
Wonderful. Welcome from Brian K. At Thomas Middle School. And to my right, we have...
Wasn't planning on talking. Sorry, thank you.
Thrown it at you.
Okay. Piper Boston from South Middle School.
We share everything. It's wonderful. All right, so I'm very interested to see how many of you are going to have your oldest and possibly your only child transitioning next year into middle school. I mean, almost half of you guys. So that means the other half have already transitioned somebody to middle school. You guys look really comfortable at this point. So this is great. So one of our tasks tonight is kind of talk through what a typical day looks like, and then we're going to talk about all the different programs that we offer at the middle school level for special education. So a typical day in middle school looks like nothing. There is no typical day at middle school. Every day is different, unique, and exciting. Those who have kids at middle school already know. Yes, there are 10 periods in the day, but they typically look a lot different every single day. So there are 10 periods at both Thomas and at South. We both have a home base or a homeroom period, where basically we're taking attendance, doing some student news, and ultimately getting to know the child and then building in some social emotional learning into that time as well. And then begins all of the academic classes. So students will have ELA classes, a social studies, a science, a PE. They'll have creative arts, world language. I don't think I missed anything yet. So throughout their day, they are transitioning from one class to the next, all 10 periods. So it's busy. They have a lot to remember. They have 2 locker combinations. I know we only tell you about one, but there's a PE locker combo as well. You can reserve telling your child that there's 2. Just let them worry about 1 for now. So we start the day in home base, get everything settled and ready, make sure we have all the kids present. And then the homeroom period, if your child requires additional support, we have typically an adult that can be in there to support. It could be a special ed teacher or it could be a teaching assistant there to support your child if they have additional needs in the home base period. So that is something we provide for all children that have that need. At South and at Thomas, we do home base and homeroom just slightly differently. I don't know if you guys are changing how you approach it next year. I know we are not. So we have 2 adults that service all of our homerooms. And home base at South, it's like you cut them in half, and then 1 teacher takes 15 kids approximately. But ultimately, the intent and the purpose of that time is the same. It just looks slightly different at South than it does Thomas. All students participate in academics at their ability level. You are here because your child is identified as having some special needs, so you're already being serviced, or your child is, at their academic level, and we have multiple levels of support that we offer that you're going to hear about tonight. So if you don't have a handout, which I'm looking at, looks like most of you do, looks like we have 1 person or maybe 2 that don't have it. I think it's critical you have that and bring it home because there's a lot of information you're going to get tonight about the different programs. Physical education, everybody participates, and guess what happens in middle school? You change into a uniform. Yeah, how exciting is that? So most of your children have probably never changed in front of strangers, so it is a little awkward, and I think it's important you transition your child mentally and get them ready for that, because it's a little weird. If somebody tells you that middle school children shower during PE, they're lying to you. We never shower. We have showers. I just have never seen a student shower in 7 years at the middle school level. So if somebody tells them they shower every day, they really don't. And our passing periods are 4 minutes. I don't know how you would shower that quickly anyway. But we do have showers available if students required that or needed that. They're available. All sixth graders have lunch at the same period at South and Thomas. I believe it's 6th hour. And all sixth graders have lunch at the same time. There will be no 7th graders or 8th graders in with their lunch period. They eat during 7th period for 7th grade and 8th period for 8th grade. And then creative arts is a rotation in 6th grade. You rotate through the 6 different offerings that we have. And there's support provided in those classes as well if your child requires that. Piper, did I forget anything in the typical day?
I think you did well. So I think just before we turn it over to the panel, we will repeat everything like all spring ad nauseum for you. So don't feel like you have to be a master of all of this. And then again, part of tonight is sort of to give you an overview of what our middle school day looks like, but then the different programs will make decisions that we feel is best for your child to ease that transition. So no, I think you said everything, and then you'll quickly learn that your children will be in great hands. So welcome and thanks. Good job.
So before we start talking about all of the specific programs, District 25 has a general continuum of services. I will post this handout online so you can click on that link and see what our continuum is, but we offer services in special education, everything from a consultative model where a special ed teacher may be talking to a general education teacher and just providing strategies, all the way through to resource, to some of the instructional programs we'll talk about tonight. We have students who attend public therapeutic day schools. You may know of some of them in our community, like the school at Minor, Kirk. And then we have students who attend private therapeutic day schools as well, some of which are in our community or outside of our community across the north and northwest suburbs. And then we also have students who are homebound, hospital-bound, as well as residential. So we offer a full continuum from early childhood all the way through 8th grade. And then within middle school, we have another mini continuum. So that's what we'll talk about here. But once this is posted tomorrow, you can go back and click those links and it'll take you directly to those documents. So we're going to start sort of from the least amount of support down to the most, starting with our resource programs, of which there are 3 different kinds, then talking about extended resource, individualized learning, our speech pathologists and social worker. We'll talk a little bit about those supports, and we'll go from there. So resource.
Welcome. So resource would be if your student is in gen ed for most of the time and they require this resource period. It is in place of a world language, and we'll get more specific with that, but there might be pre-teaching or reteaching going on depending on their individual needs of what classes they need. They also might be in this class because they have some organizational difficulties that they need some support with. So we check assignment notebooks, we might plan out some long-term assignments for them, helping them organize their trappers and lockers, giving them more check-ins that they wouldn't get as a typical middle school student on a regular basis. There might be some small group instruction going on if they need some support based on one of their core classes that they're working on. And then prepping for tests and quizzes. There's a lot of vocabulary, a lot of tests and quizzes. That's a big jump from elementary school. They have homework pretty much every single day, tests and quizzes every single week, sometimes multiple in a week. So that's another reason for this class period, is to really help them learn how to study and how to prepare for those tests on a daily basis, even if it's the teacher doesn't tell you right away. You need to be studying what you learned that day kind of thing, just so you're not waiting and cramming for the night before. And then students with speech-only IEPs don't typically qualify for a resource period. It has to really regard more academic goals as well. So their needs have to go beyond just the speech and language. And then it is taught by a special education teacher, and typically we try to keep them on teams so that that person would be the contact person and be their case manager as well, to get to know the students. Within that program, they are integrated into gen ed classes, academics as appropriate. So again, if they need language arts in the gen ed and they're able to do that, or they need small group for other things, it's really based on their needs and what their 5th grade teachers are telling us, and we work as a team to kind of place them where they best will meet all those needs. Home base is a general ed class. Creative arts are general ed classes, PE, health, and lunch as well. So they have lots of integration times where they can be with their other general ed peers. And then the single aid classrooms, like Mrs. LeBlanc had said, that we don't follow the students. We typically stay at 6th grade, and they'll get a new resource teacher at 7th grade or 8th grade as well, so that we kind of specialize in our academic curriculum. And then I mentioned that this resource period is in place of a world language typically. So at middle school, students are able to take world language classes. If your student, based on their needs, we typically would put them in the resource period in place of this. As they meet their goals and we work as a team and they no longer need this resource period anymore, if that's the case, then they will be transitioned out the next year. So they have to stay in there for the whole year. It's not in the middle of the year that they can be transitioned out because it is an academic class. And then just so you know that there's no requirement prior to high school, so there's not a disadvantage if they aren't taking a world language. You don't have to worry about that. If they need a resource period for all 3 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th, that's perfectly fine. And they won't be hindered by that. Colleges typically require 2 years of world language in the high school level regardless of the middle school, so I know sometimes parents worry about, oh, well, he didn't have any experience in it. It's okay, they take a placement test again at the high school level, and so even students that have gone through foreign language for however many years, they still would have to retake that placement test and be placed in high school. And then there's no world language requirement for high school or graduation either. So again, if they continue to need supports in high school, the foreign language will not be hindered if they don't have that need. And then placement and resource will be determined at the transition meeting. So when we meet with your 5th grade teachers, we'll talk as a team and we'll really decide if they typically do need this resource period. Most of our students that have these special needs, they typically have the resource period, but we would talk that through, and if they qualify for a world language, we would allow that as well. Speech-only language students would select a foreign language. They wouldn't be part of this resource period. And then if you're unsure, talk to your case manager. If you're not sure about it, make sure, and they'll help you decide whether, preliminary, because I know those forms come out about choosing a world language. And so if you're not sure, talk to them if they want you to pick a language or not. And then just so you're aware that world language is an academic class, so there's a lot of writing assignments, reading, homework, quizzes, and tests. So I know sometimes that's a big jump. They think that it's just a fun class, and it is fun, but it does require a lot of academics and grades as well. So students do struggle just like they would in any other core academic class. Okay? All good? Yep.
All right. Hi, I'm Sue Menas. I'm over at Thomas. Welcome. I'm going to be talking about the resource program, the co-taught classes. And these co-taught classes are designed for students who need the following: access to the general education curriculum. The concepts are usually reinforced and retaught in the general education setting. These classes are usually for math classes and for the ELA, and that stands for English Language Arts. So that's the reading and the language arts, and that's usually a block of 2 periods back to back so that you get the reading and the writing. And those classes are general education, usually taught by the general education language arts teacher and the special education teacher, both in that class together. And these are integration opportunities. They're offered, again, it's based year by year on the student's needs. So again, if they're needed in math or they're needed in the ELA classes, it's based on those needs year by year. And those take place in the general education class in that subject area that is needed there. Again, it changes yearly based on the demands of the student needs. Typically, we say they're both math and language arts. Science and social studies, usually that's taught by the science or social studies teacher with a teaching assistant in there. And the students typically also have that resource period for the additional skill instruction that may be needed for that. The resource program also offers the small group classes. These classes are designed for those students who may need that slower paced instruction, pre-teaching and reteaching of the curriculum. This is both offered for math and again for that ELA, for reading and language arts. This is taught by the special education teacher. This may be used with the general education curriculum. A lot of times there's an alternate curriculum depending again on student needs. The student attends a general education science, social studies, and health classes. Those are not small group. Those are taught as the general education classes. Some students may be placed in these classes with teaching assistants for that support that they may need for their accommodations. Some students may attend a second reading or math class depending on what they need. Science or social studies classes to further support that development that they might need. Students may attend either that ELA class or math class, depending again on what goals they might need. And currently the writing piece is also taught in that ELA, that English Language Arts class is covered both writing and reading. So that's covered in both that block class.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Tatera, and I teach at Thomas Middle School. I'm the extended resource teacher. So the extended resource program is just an additional layer of support. It is multi-grade, so we do have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders within that class. Typically, we don't have any more than 12 students in the class, and that's taught by one special education teacher, and then we have teaching assistants who come in to help support the students. Oftentimes, a really positive about having students in the extended resource classes, we work with all the related services together. So we do have social work, speech language pathologist, and we work really closely together. So we have collaboration 2 to 3 times a week. We talk to each other about the kids. We make plans based off of their needs together. So it is a nice group of staff who's all working together to meet those kids' needs. Kids who are typically in the extended resource program are usually 2 to 3 grade levels below. So they do need extra support. So they would need a slower pace, alternate curriculum. Sometimes they might need behavioral supports. They might need student skills or organizational skills supports. Oftentimes our students in that class do require extra support in order to get through the day-to-day classes, and it would be too difficult to be in gen ed classes oftentimes just because of the pace and the amount of vocabulary, the amount of reading and writing that's required. Students do sometimes also have OT and PT as well. We utilize technology just like all the other kids. We do have Chromebooks. Sometimes they might have assistive technology devices in order to help them if they need them. Most of our, or all of our extended resource students participate in PARCC testing. And within the extended resource program, we really focus on having that extra layer of support with positive behavioral support. So we use, incentive programs throughout the entire day. Oftentimes the kids get to see very specific staff members instead of seeing a different teacher for every single class. They get to see the same teacher most of the day, which is nice when they do have more complex needs. And we do work on problem solving skills, student skills, and self-advocacy a lot in that program. And then based off of kids' needs, some of our students do go into gen ed classes. So like say they're really great in social studies, they've got a lot of background knowledge, we think that they could handle it. We do offer those opportunities. So it totally depends on the kid. If your child needs the additional support in other classes, but they're great in math, we can look in putting them into a gen ed class for math, and if they might need a TA, we can add that. So it totally depends on the kid. Every kid in extended resource has a different schedule based off of their needs. So they are able to integrate into any class, basically.
Hi, I'm Amy Lashik. I'm the Individualized Learning Program teacher over at South, but ILP is also at Thomas as well, just like the ERP program is at both schools. The ILP program is typically for kids that are more than 3 grade levels below. They require special education support for more than 50% of their day is in our classroom. They require modified small group instruction in all academic areas, so specialized instruction, different curriculum for all those subjects. And they benefit from instructional materials delivered in a multisensory approach. So we do a lot of outings, we do a lot of visuals, a lot of hands-on activities. We have functional academic focus in all areas with a highly structured routine every day. We have a transdisciplinary model, and we use positive behavioral supports that really focus on building those student skills and that independence in all areas. The ILP program is multi-age, so 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are in our class with no more than 10 students per class with TA supports. Our students can either take PARCC or some take DLM testing. Sensory and movement breaks are built into our day. I know at South it's nice we have a sensory room right next door that we can send our students to, and I think over at Thomas they have one as well. we have majority of academic time is spent in our classroom with consistent adults, so they're not moving from class to class to class with as much movement and things. We focus on building independence with activities of daily living. One nice thing, we have a life skills class. Just some of the things we cover in that class are current events, cooking, health and safety, leisure and jobs. And for social studies and science concepts are embedded into our curriculum. So this curriculum is thematic across subjects and is divided into 4-week thematic units. Some integration opportunities, so our students are in creative arts, they're in PE, they're in home base sometimes with gen ed students, or they could be in our ILP home base. They're in lunch, and then we offer a wide variety of extracurricular activities as well for students to be integrated with. Some students, depending on their needs, can even go into the extended resource program for some classes, just depending on where their needs are.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Delaney, and I guess I'm the autism coach for the district. I go back and forth between schools depending on where needs are. My background is I'm a classroom special education teacher. I'm also a certified speech language pathologist. So I have can service students in a variety of areas. Right now we have a communication class at the elementary school, and we used to have a communication class at South for those students to continue with. Now we have students go to their home schools and be included in the individualized learning program with supports as needed. So I work closely with the ILP teacher. We team teach certain classes. I might teach one class or be able to assist with modifications, with structured teaching, with training teaching assistants, with data collection, assistive technology, errorless teaching, whatever a student would need so that they can be successful in that larger environment, as well as helping with different pullouts and different levels of differentiation. I'm also available to meet with the team to problem solve, to help students be successful, to come up with plans for academics, for social events, for outings, for physical needs, whatever they need above and beyond what's typically done in that ILP program. So it's kind of an as-needed support, and it's nice that I can travel between the buildings so that the students can stay in their home schools.
Hi, I'm Megan Moser. I'm speech language pathologist over at South, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the different delivery models for speech and language services. As you guys are probably familiar, if you have students that get speech and language services, they can receive speech and language only, meaning that they don't have any other supports. That's the only support that is on their IEP. And that support is typically provided in a pull-out model, meaning that we're pulling them out of their classroom so that they can receive their minutes to work on their goals and receive their support. Their goals might include articulation or language just based on their needs, but it really needs to be impacting their educational functioning. So I know that's something that as they get older, we're always looking at, we need to have that impact on their education. So lots of times we're doing curriculum vocabulary, or we're looking at what they're doing based in their classes and how we can support them in a pull-out model to support their general education needs. We rotate their schedule, so lots of times in the elementary school they have a set schedule where they might come for speech, once a week on Mondays at 10 o'clock. Well, that's difficult in the middle school because they rotate their schedules. We don't want them to always miss the same class. So what we do is rotate their schedule. So they might miss a creative arts one week, they might miss PE the next week, they might miss social studies the next week. And we keep track of that so they're not missing the same thing every week in a row. So they don't have a set schedule. We give them passes during their home base time so that they know when they'll be coming to see us. And then students can also receive speech and language services if they get resource support. So if they are getting support in reading or math and they work with the resource teacher, they also might get support in the area of speech and language. And if they're getting that, they have that resource period, which allows us to have that time to pull from that class in order for them to receive that support. So if they're getting speech and language once a week, we can pull from that resource period once a week so they aren't missing another class. And lots of times that's just, it's convenient and it's nice for the students because we work closely with the teachers so that they are easily caught up or that they know what they're missing, and then it's just that can be a set time for them during the week. So they know that, you know, on Tuesdays or on Thursdays during resource, they check in with their resource teacher and then they come down to receive their speech and language support.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Walker, and I'm also a speech-language pathologist. I'm at South Middle School, and I primarily work with the students that are in the Extended Resource Program and the Individualized Learning Program. At Thomas Mirrors South also, they have 2 speech-language pathologists that basically do what Megan and I do, but over there. So in the Extended Resource Program, I support language skills with core academics or with a modified curriculum. We work on social skills development. It's highly collaborative. I work very closely with the extended resource teacher to adapt some of the materials because our goal, of course, is to really work on those language skills so that the student can move, hopefully, into the resource program or into a less restrictive program. The services usually in extended resource are pull out, but we also do a lot of push-in services. So sometimes during social studies or during reading, I will come in and do specific vocabulary or work on a specific part of a book that they're reading to really focus on those language skills. I also work in the Individualized Learning Program. Again, very collaborative. We spend a lot of time working together. We have developed and really individualized a lot of language-based learning for the kids in there. We address a lot of functional language and life skills. We work a huge amount on social skills. I go with the students into the community, so we do a lot of language prepping before and a lot of during and a lot of after.
And then we have 2 other social workers who work with the general education students. So additional supports we have within the district are occupational therapy and physical therapy. And again, those might be provided via push-in or pull-out types of delivery. We have adaptive PE, which may be direct minutes or consultation, where that's more kind of like behind the scenes. They might check in with the student, but we're really working with the team, kind of behind the scenes. There's also TA or teaching assistant supports available as needed, and then vision and hearing supports, which is provided by NSSEO. Social work, yeah, again, push in or pull out. It really depends on the student needs. In extended resource, we do a lot more groups that are pulled out of the room, and in individualized learning program, it's more push in during life skills classes. We also are trying to utilize lunch groups. It's a little bit different this year because we do have some allergies that we take very seriously. So we're trying to keep everybody safe. That's extremely important to us, your child's safety. So we will meet with students sometimes after they've finished eating, but we again utilize a rotating schedule sometimes as well, just like speech. We do a lot of team collaboration too, working really closely with the teachers, the speech, and also with you guys too. We work a lot with you guys to make sure we can work on things at school and at home.
So this is one of the slides that's in a slightly different order, but we wanted to just kind of return back to just as a school, what else we offer beyond our special ed. I think you've heard from our whole panel, and again, this is just a cross-section of some of the staff members that we have, but I know Deanna Nabar let us off and probably was too nervous to say her name, and she's one of our South resource teachers. So, But just to kind of finish, we'll always continue special ed problem solving for your children. So, we really do feel confident in our transition process, but the IEP process is always open and fluid. So we'll meet and convene with parents. You're always part of the team, and kind of discuss what's working for your child and what's not. And a lot of times we can have several meetings, or sometimes we only need 1 or 2 meetings throughout the year because of how things are progressing. And then also response to intervention too. Sometimes students come in with an IEP, but we identify new needs. That's sometimes part of what happens, especially as you move into a bigger school, or we learn more things. So that's always available to our students as well. 11th hour is something that I think we term at both schools. So after school, we have 10 periods during the school day, as Mr. K kind of outlined, but our 11th period is sort of a after school time. And really that time can be it's available to all kids. A lot of times students in our resource program are encouraged to stay after with their case managers so that they can just have sort of a second time to just revisit homework, make sure they're organized. However, they can stay with any of their teachers to get supports and work. And then that's true of all of our programming. So really after school kind of does tend to become part of many students' days. You'll get a lot of this information this spring, but right now I don't envision our school day changing, so your kids will be gearing up for an earlier start, 7:45, you as well. And then our school day ends at 2:45. So when we say 11th hour, it would be as long as 3:30 in the afternoon. And then you'll get to hear details too about how we support that with bus transportation if your student is a bus rider, and how we accommodate that. But after school can also lead into extracurricular, so we feel like both the academic and the social emotional is important. So again, sometimes students stay after just to sort of have that extra locker time, a little extra organization, or to get specific support. Or kids stay after for a myriad of different clubs. And I know at both schools we get pretty creative in our level of extracurriculars. So anything from Minecraft Club to we've had duct tape club to Rubik's Cube Challenge Club. I have a self-defense club starting in 2 weeks. So, and sometimes these are just for 6th graders. Sometimes there are as many as 5 kids, and sometimes there are as many as 115. So you'll get to learn that this spring. And sometimes our IEP teams are part of helping your student be specifically supported in a extracurricular if we feel like that's an important piece to their whole being. We have, I think I did it, and we have also various lunch supports. So she talked about how our social workers often are running different groups and try and promote different things. Sometimes we have students working during lunch time, and we have just different activities happening. So there's a lot of different ways that we try and support students, both within the school day and outside of the school day. So I think, anything to add?
One thing to clarify. I just wanted to clarify one thing. At the elementary school, your student has a variety of creative arts, but they're every week. So they might have gym twice, they might have art once, different things, but all year long. The way we do it at the middle school is that they get intensely involved in one creative arts for a shorter period of time. So they'll have art every day for 29 to 34 days. Then they'll have digital arts and design every day for 29 to 34 days. So they'll have the same amount of exposure to our creative arts, but they do it in clumps. We do it hexters or quints, we call them. Just so you know that they won't have the same one all year long.
Thank you.
And while we're on that topic, the other difference is PE. So as Mary Beth said, right now you're accustomed to PE twice a week. In middle school, it's daily, and it's 3 quarters out of the 4. And in the 4th quarter, you don't have PE, you have health. So students go to a health class, correct? Most of the time. However, for our students in ILP and some students in ERP, the teachers have worked with the social workers to develop an alternate health curriculum. So when they are talking about some of those topics that are sensitive and that may be more complex for some of our students. So when we're talking about issues of puberty, dating, we do units on domestic violence. So some of those topics that may be harder for some of our students to understand, their special education teachers are teaching it in conjunction with a social worker at a slightly lower level, focus more on the functional aspects of that curriculum. And that's a conversation that your team will have with you as to whether or not it's appropriate for your child to go to the general education health class or to attend an alternate version. Would you say that's accurate? Okay. All right, so a little bit more about the transition process and then we'll wrap up. As I said, teams are meeting just in a couple of weeks to begin discussing individual students. Parents will be invited to attend transition meetings in the spring. They're held at your sending elementary school, so you'll be invited to a meeting at Olive or at Patton or at Dryden or Windsor or Westgate or Ivy or Olive. Did I hit them all? Greenbrier. They're anticipated April 2018. Some of them will be in May. It is considered an IEP meeting if your student has an annual review. So you meet yearly to go over their goals. If their annual review is typically in the spring, they'll do those 2 meetings together. So they'll save you a meeting. You only have to come once. If you've already had your annual review because it was in the fall or the winter, you'll still have 1 more meeting with your elementary team in the spring. All the members of your elementary team will attend, and then 1 representative from the middle school will attend. Sometimes there will be more. So if we're trying to decide, is it ERP placement better or an ILP placement better, reps from both programs may come so that they can talk about which program is best, or they may even create a hybrid. We've had kids who are in both, where they attend some classes in one, some classes in the other. The same thing with resource and ERP. But you won't have the whole entire team. So the speech pathologist, the social worker, all 7 people who may support your child from the middle school side may not come to that meeting because it would be a lot of people. It's really overwhelming, and we have a lot of time set up to share that information back and forth. But the case managers are there. They take very good notes, and they bring that information back. A middle school administrator is also present, as well as you, the parents, most importantly. Again, the purpose of that meeting is to review the goals, to review and revise classroom accommodations, to talk about minutes of service, because again, they may not match up. Typically, in the elementary school, we write things to the hour, so we know that kids have reading and language arts an hour a day in elementary, but in middle school, because it's a block, it's 80 minutes a day, so we have to make those conversions. Speech and language in elementary tends to be in 30-minute blocks. In middle school, it looks more like 40. So you'll see those numbers shift just because of the structure of the school day. They'll change the program placement on the IEP if your child has a change. So if they were in the IS program at Westgate and they're going into ERP, the program name will change on the IEP. The services may not look very different, but the name of the program changes from elementary to middle. Doesn't change their eligibility for services. We talked about case managers. Typically, resource teachers are the case manager, or if your child's in an instructional program, that teacher is their case manager just as it is in elementary. And then speech-only students are managed by the speech pathologist. So our goal is to work with you to determine the most appropriate level of support for your child, to really make sure that we're writing goals that are moving them towards independence. We want to plan and structure the supports that your child will need to be successful in 6th grade. Sometimes parents say, I want to go in with less support and see how they do. We tend to look at it a little differently. We want kids to go in and feel as successful as possible and then reward that success by starting to pull things back. We don't want to say, hey, great, you're going to go without all these supports and, oh, it didn't work out for you. That's just crushing for a child. So we would rather say, hey, let's start with that resource period and then pull it back when you show us that you're really strong and you're doing well, and we'll celebrate that success. We want to design an individualized transition support plan if it's needed. So if we need to do social stories, if we need to do those extra visits, if we need to talk about transportation, if your child needs pictures of the teachers they'll have next year, we'll put all of that together depending on your child's individual needs. And then the team will communicate those supports to you and how they'll be implemented throughout the school day. So thank you for coming tonight. We're honored and excited to be working with you as your children move from 5th grade to 6th grade. We're looking forward to a great transition and a year of helping your children grow and learn to be middle schoolers. Please always feel free to contact your current case manager or your child's coordinator. You can contact Mr. K, Ms. Boston if you have questions specific to middle school. You can always contact me. We want to do everything we can to make this as smooth of a transition for you and for your child. So all the contact information is at the back of your packet. You have my email and phone number. You have Kelly's information. Those of you who know Lisa Cramp, if you're at Westgate, she's the coordinator there. She's also at Ivy Hill this year. Her information is there. Lindsay Anastasio is the coordinator at Windsor for K-5 as well as the assistant principal there. Diane Kafka is at Greenbrier. She also runs our early childhood program. And then you have Piper and Brian's contact information as well. So that concludes our boxed program. If anyone has questions they want to ask to the group, we're happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll let you get up and mingle either way.